The morning sun barely kissed the horizon when Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison received the encrypted message that would change everything. His SEAL Team 6 unit had been conducting routine reconnaissance along the Euphrates River for 3 weeks, gathering intelligence on suspected insurgent movements in the remote Iraqi countryside. What started as a standard operation was about to become one of the most puzzling encounters in modern military history. Morrison gathered his 7-man team around the tactical map spread across a weathered wooden table in their temporary forward operating base. The abandoned farmhouse provided perfect cover, its crumbling walls offering protection while maintaining clear sightlines to the river valley below. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Rodriguez, the team's designated marksman, cleaned his rifle methodically while listening to the briefing. Intelligence suggests a high-value target will be moving through grid reference 7-4 Alpha sometime between 0800 and 1200 hours, Morrison explained, his weathered finger tracing the meandering path of the river on the map. We're talking about Hassan al-Mahmoud, the bomb maker responsible for at least 12 IED attacks on coalition forces in the past 6 months. The team absorbed this information with professional calm. Chief Petty Officer Tommy Ghost Williams, their communications specialist, adjusted his headset and confirmed their satellite uplink was functioning perfectly. Petty Officer Second Class David Chen, their explosive ordnance expert, double-checked his gear while Petty Officer James Bulldog Thompson, their heavy weapons specialist, performed final maintenance on his machine gun. The target is expected to travel by boat with 2 or 3 bodyguards, Morrison continued. Our job is surveillance and identification. If we get a clean shot at al-Mahmoud, we're authorized to engage. Otherwise, we track and report his movements to command. Rodriguez nodded, understanding his crucial role in the mission. As the team sniper, any long-range engagement would fall to him. His modified M24 sniper weapon system had served him well through 2 previous deployments, and he could consistently hit targets at distances exceeding 800 meters. The team moved out before dawn, using night vision equipment to navigate the treacherous terrain leading to their overwatch position. They established themselves on a rocky outcropping approximately 600 meters from the river, with perfect concealment among the scattered boulders and scrub vegetation. Rodriguez set up his rifle with meticulous precision, adjusting for wind speed, humidity, and the gradually increasing temperature as the sun rose higher. Hours passed in tense silence. The SEALs maintained their positions with the patience that separated elite operators from ordinary soldiers. Rodriguez kept his scope trained on the river while the rest of the team monitored different sectors, ensuring no one could approach their position undetected. At 1030 hours, movement caught Rodriguez's attention. A small motorboat emerged from around a bend in the river, carrying 4 men. Through his high-powered scope, he could clearly identify the passengers. 3 wore typical insurgent clothing, but the 4th man matched the photograph of Hassan al-Mahmoud perfectly. I have eyes on target, Rodriguez whispered into his radio. Positive identification on al-Mahmoud. He's in the boat with 3 escorts, approximately 580 meters southeast of our position. Morrison studied the scene through his binoculars. Confirmed. Rodriguez, you have permission to engage on my mark. Wind is minimal, target is moving slowly. This is a good shot. Rodriguez controlled his breathing, settling into the familiar rhythm of long-range precision shooting. His finger found the trigger as he tracked the boat's movement, calculating the lead necessary to compensate for the target's motion. The crosshairs settled on al-Mahmoud's center mass. Target acquired, Rodriguez reported softly. Ready to engage. Take the shot, Morrison commanded. The rifle's report echoed across the river valley, and, through his scope, Rodriguez watched al-Mahmoud collapse backward in the boat. The other passengers immediately began shouting and gesturing frantically, one of them returning fire in the general direction of the SEAL position with an AK-47, though his shots fell far short of their concealed location. But something unexpected happened next. Another shot rang out, this one from a completely different direction. One of al-Mahmoud's bodyguards spun around and fell into the river. Rodriguez kept his eye glued to his scope, confusion evident in his voice. Did anyone else engage? He asked over the radio. Someone just took out one of the escorts, and it wasn't me. Morrison swept the surrounding area with his binoculars, searching for muzzle flashes or any sign of another shooter. The remaining 2 men in the boat were now in complete panic, one trying to start the engine while the other fired wildly in multiple directions. "Negative," Morrison replied grimly. "We're the only friendlies in this area. There's another shooter out there, and we don't know who they are." The mysterious third shot shattered the morning calm and sent the SEAL team into high alert. Morrison's mind raced through possibilities as he scanned the surrounding terrain through his binoculars. No friendly forces were supposed to be operating in this sector, and the nearest coalition base was over 40 kilometers away. Rodriguez kept his rifle trained on the river while the surviving insurgents struggled with their disabled boat engine. The motor sputtered and died repeatedly as one man frantically pulled the starting cord while his companion continued firing random bursts from his assault rifle. Their panic was evident even from 600 meters away. "Ghost, get on the horn to command," Morrison ordered. "We need to know if there are any other units in our area of operations." Williams quickly established communication with their base, speaking in hushed tones into his encrypted radio. After several minutes of back and forth, he turned to Morrison with a troubled expression. "Command confirms negative on friendly forces, sir. We're the only coalition unit within a 15-kilometer radius. They're asking if we've made contact with enemy snipers." Morrison considered this carefully. Enemy snipers typically didn't shoot at their own people, especially not high-value targets like Murmured. The shot pattern suggested professional training, the kind that took years to develop. Whoever fired that shot knew exactly what they were doing. "Movement, 2 o'clock, Chen whispered urgently, pointing toward a cluster of palm trees near the riverbank, roughly 400 meters from the boat. Through his scope, Rodriguez caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. A figure dressed in what appeared to be modified ghillie suit camouflage emerged partially from the vegetation, just long enough to chamber another round in what looked like a military-grade sniper rifle. The figure moved with the fluid precision of someone thoroughly trained in fieldcraft. "I've got visual on the unknown shooter," Rodriguez reported. "Appears to be a lone operator, well concealed, approximately 400 meters northeast of the target boat. This guy knows what he's doing." The mysterious sniper's next shot eliminated the boat's engine entirely, sending metal fragments flying. The remaining insurgents abandoned their vessel and began swimming toward the eastern shore, their AK-47s left behind as they struggled against the current. Morrison made a tactical decision. "Rodriguez, can you get a clean shot on the unknown?" "Negative, sir. He's back in concealment. I lost visual after he moved behind the tree line." What happened next defied all conventional military logic. The unknown sniper began systematically herding the swimming insurgents toward a specific section of the riverbank, placing precision shots in the water just close enough to change their direction without actually hitting them. It was like watching a chess master manipulate pieces on a board. "This is incredible," Thompson muttered, watching through his own scope. "Whoever this is, they're pushing those guys exactly where they want them." The two insurgents eventually reached the shore, exhausted and terrified. They collapsed on a narrow beach beneath a rocky overhang, temporarily hidden from the SEAL team's view but perfectly exposed to the mysterious sniper's position. Williams suddenly grabbed Morrison's arm. "Sir, I'm picking up radio chatter. Someone's transmitting on an old Iraqi military frequency. Can you make out what they're saying?" "It's broken Arabic, but I think I heard the word for justice repeated several times." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Stories had been circulating among intelligence circles for months about a lone operator working in the region, someone who seemed to target insurgent leaders with supernatural precision. Coalition forces had never confirmed the existence of this phantom shooter, dismissing most reports as battlefield rumors or misidentified friendly fire incidents. The radio in Williams' hand crackled to life with heavily accented English. "American soldiers, you have done good work today. Al-Mahmoud will build no more bombs." Morrison grabbed the radio. "Identify yourself." "Who is this?" Static filled the airwaves for nearly a minute before the voice returned. "Someone who has lost much to these men. Someone who remembers when this land knew peace.
Are you coalition forces? Are you American? I am what remains when everything else is taken away. Rodriguez suddenly stiffened behind his rifle. Sir, the unknown is moving. I can see him crossing the river.
Through their scopes, the SEAL team watched in amazement as a figure in woodland camouflage waded into the Euphrates River, moving with deliberate purpose toward the opposite bank. The water reached chest deep in some places, but the mysterious sniper's movement remained steady and controlled.
He's carrying some kind of modified rifle, Rodriguez observed.
Looks like it might be an old Dragunov, but with aftermarket modifications.
Scope looks Western-made.
The figure reached the far shore and immediately disappeared into a grove of date palms. Within seconds, it was as if he had never been there at all. Morrison studied the scene through his binoculars, trying to process what his team had just witnessed.
Ghost, try raising him again.
Williams adjusted his radio frequency and transmitted several calls, but received only silence in response.
Sir, Chen said quietly, what do we tell command about this?
Morrison considered their options. They had successfully eliminated their primary target, but the presence of an unknown friendly operator complicated their after-action report significantly. Command would want detailed explanations, and Morrison wasn't sure he had any satisfactory answers.
We tell them the truth, Morrison decided. We engaged and eliminated Al-Mahmoud as ordered.
We observed what appeared to be another sniper in the area, possibly a local asset working against insurgent forces.
Should we investigate the area where the unknown was positioned? Rodriguez asked.
Morrison shook his head.
Negative.
We maintain position and complete our original mission parameters.
If this phantom wants to remain anonymous, that's his call.
As the morning progressed toward noon, the SEAL team maintained their overwatch position, but the mysterious sniper never reappeared. The only evidence of his presence was the disabled boat drifting downstream and the two surviving insurgents, who had long since fled deeper into the countryside. Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would haunt his thoughts long after this deployment ended. 3 days after the river incident, the SEAL team received new intelligence that would bring them face to face with their mysterious ally once again. Captain Sarah Mitchell, their intelligence officer, had been analyzing intercepted communications and satellite imagery when she discovered something troubling.
Gentlemen, we have a problem, Mitchell announced during the evening briefing. Our phantom sniper struck again yesterday, approximately 20 kilometers north of your position. Local sources report that Khalil Hassan, Al-Mahmoud's second-in-command, was eliminated while meeting with weapon suppliers near the old irrigation canal. Morrison leaned forward, studying the satellite photographs Mitchell spread across the table. The images showed a small compound surrounded by agricultural fields, with clear evidence of a firefight.
Several vehicles were burned out, and scorch marks indicated the use of explosives.
What makes you think it was our unknown shooter? Morrison asked. The precision, Mitchell replied, pointing to specific details in the photographs. Hassan was killed with a single headshot from approximately 800 meters. None of his bodyguards were harmed, and there's no evidence of a sustained firefight.
Someone neutralized the target and disappeared without engaging the security detail. Rodriguez studied the photos with professional interest. That's a difficult shot, especially in those conditions.
Wind patterns around irrigation canals can be tricky. Williams looked up from his communication equipment. Ma'am, are we dealing with another coalition sniper team? Maybe special operations from another country? Mitchell shook her head. We've checked with all allied forces.
No one claims responsibility for these eliminations.
British SAS, Australian SSR, German KSK, everyone denies having assets in this region.
Thompson cleaned his weapon while listening to the briefing.
Could be a lone wolf, someone with military training who's operating independently.
That's our working theory, Mitchell confirmed.
But we need more information. Command wants your team to investigate the compound where Hassan was eliminated. Maybe we can find some clues about our phantom's identity. Morrison assigned roles for the reconnaissance mission.
They would approach the compound under cover of darkness, search for evidence of the mysterious sniper's methods, and attempt to establish some form of communication if he appeared again. The team moved out at 0200 hours, using night vision equipment to navigate the complex network of irrigation ditches and agricultural fields surrounding the target compound. The journey took 3 hours, as they maintained careful noise discipline and avoided the few roads that crossed their route. Rodriguez took point, his sniper rifle configured for close-range work in case they encountered enemy forces. The compound appeared abandoned when they arrived, with no signs of recent activity except for the battle damage visible in the satellite photos. Chen carefully examined the burned vehicles while Morrison and Williams searched the main building. Thompson established a perimeter watch, his machine gun positioned to cover their withdrawal route if necessary. "Sir, you need to see this," Chen called softly from beside one of the destroyed trucks.
Morrison approached to find Chen crouched next to what had clearly been Hassan's vehicle.
The truck's windshield showed a single bullet hole, perfectly centered, with spiderweb cracks radiating outward from the impact point. "Entry angle suggests the shot came from that ridgeline," Chen said, pointing to elevated ground roughly 800 meters to the northwest. "Whoever made this shot had to account for the vehicle's movement, wind drift, and bullet drop over that distance."
Rodriguez joined them, studying the ballistic evidence.
"This is world-class marksmanship.
I'm talking Olympic-level precision shooting."
While examining the compound's interior, Williams discovered something that made the hair on his arms stand up. Scratched into the wall above where Hassan had been sitting was a single word in Arabic, carved with what appeared to be a knife blade: justice. "Same calling card as the radio transmission," Morrison observed grimly. Their investigation was interrupted by the sound of Rodriguez's voice over the radio.
"Movement on the ridgeline. I've got someone observing our position."
Morrison immediately moved to where Rodriguez had established an overwatch position. Through night vision scopes, they could barely make out a human silhouette approximately 600 meters away, positioned exactly where Chen had calculated the fatal shot originated.
"Is he armed?" Morrison asked. "Affirmative. Looks like the same modified rifle we saw at the river."
Morrison made a decision that would define the rest of their mission. Instead of taking defensive positions, he stood up and removed his night vision goggles, making himself clearly visible in the moonlight. Then, he raised his hands above his head in the universal gesture of peaceful intentions. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then, Williams' radio crackled with the same heavily accented voice they had heard before.
"American commander, you show courage coming to this place."
Morrison keyed his radio. "We're trying to understand who you are and why you're helping us."
"I do not help you.
I help my people by removing those who bring death to innocent families."
"Are you Iraqi military? Former police?" Static filled the airwaves before the response came. "I was many things before the war came to my home. Now I am only what these criminals made me."
Morrison felt he was beginning to understand.
"You lost family to Al-Mahmoud's bombs?" "My wife. My children. My parents."
"Al-Mahmoud's devices killed 17 people in my neighborhood, including a school bus full of students." The pain in the unknown sniper's voice was unmistakable, even through the radio distortion.
Morrison realized they weren't dealing with an enemy combatant or even a coalition asset.
They were communicating with someone motivated by the most powerful force in human conflict: personal revenge.
"What's your name?" Morrison asked gently. "Names died with my family. I am only the consequence of their actions."
Rodriguez, still maintaining his scope picture, whispered into his radio.
"Sir, he's moving. Heading down from the ridge toward our position." Morrison's heart rate increased. "How far?"
"Maybe 400 meters and closing." He's not trying to hide his approach. Morrison made another crucial decision. All units, maintain positions but do not engage unless he demonstrates hostile intent.
"I'm going to meet him halfway."
"Sir, that's not advisable," Williams protested.
"Maybe not, but it's necessary. Someone needs to make contact with this guy, and it might as well be me."
Morrison checked his sidearm, ensured his radio was functioning, and began walking across the open ground toward where Rodriguez reported the approaching figure. The meeting between Morrison and the Phantom Sniper took place in a small clearing between two irrigation ditches, under a crescent moon that provided just enough light to see facial features. Morrison approached slowly, his hands visible and weapon holstered, while his team maintained overwatch positions from the compound. The man who emerged from the shadows was not what Morrison had expected. Rather than the grizzled veteran he had imagined, he found himself facing someone who appeared to be in his early 30s, with intelligent eyes that held depths of pain Morrison could barely comprehend. The stranger wore a mixture of military surplus clothing and local civilian dress, perfectly adapted for the region's terrain and climate. "You are very trusting, American commander," the man said in accented but clear English. "Many would consider that foolish." "Trust has to start somewhere," Morrison replied.
My name is Jake Morrison, Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy.
The Phantom Sniper studied Morrison carefully before responding.
I was called Omar al-Rashid before my life ended. Now I am simply someone who remembers.
Morrison noticed the rifle Omar carried was indeed a heavily modified Dragunov, with what appeared to be a Western-made scope and several custom components that suggested extensive knowledge of precision shooting equipment. "Omar, my team and I appreciate what you've been doing, but we need to understand your intentions."
Are you planning to continue these operations?
Omar's expression hardened.
There are 12 more men responsible for my family's death. I have eliminated 4, including Al-Mahmoud and Hassan. 8 remain. And, after those 8?
After those 8, perhaps I can finally rest. Morrison realized he was dealing with someone who had already died inside, someone for whom physical death held no fear because emotional death had already occurred. This made Omar incredibly dangerous, but also potentially valuable if his objectives could be aligned with coalition goals.
Omar, have you considered working with us officially? We could provide support, intelligence, better equipment.
Omar shook his head slowly. Your military has rules, procedures, oversight.
These things slow down justice. My way is faster. But also more dangerous. You're operating alone, without backup or medical support. If something goes wrong, I join my family. This is not a threat to me.
Morrison heard Rodriguez's voice in his earpiece, so quietly only he could hear it. "Sir, we've got vehicles approaching from the east. Looks like 3 trucks, maybe 2 kilometers out and closing fast." Morrison's tactical mind immediately assessed the situation. They were exposed in open ground with unknown forces approaching. Omar apparently heard the radio transmission as well, because his entire demeanor changed instantly. "Insurgents," Omar said simply. "They come here often to recover weapons and supplies Hassan's men cached in this area."
How many? Morrison asked.
Usually 12 to 15 men, sometimes more. They are well armed and familiar with this terrain. Morrison keyed his radio.
All units, we have multiple vehicles inbound.
Prepare for contact. Omar shouldered his rifle and checked his equipment with practiced efficiency.
Your men are good fighters?
The best, Morrison replied confidently.
Good. Tonight you will need them to be.
The sound of diesel engines grew louder as the approaching vehicles navigated the rough dirt roads leading to the compound. Morrison could see headlights bouncing through the darkness, still over a kilometer away but closing steadily.
Omar, will you fight alongside us?
These men killed my neighbor's son last month.
Yes, I will fight.
Morrison quickly coordinated with his team, establishing defensive positions around the compound while Omar melted back into the shadows with supernatural quietness. The approaching insurgents had no idea they were driving into a trap. Rodriguez found an elevated position inside the compound's main building, setting up his rifle with clear fields of fire toward the access road. Chen prepared demolition charges to disable the enemy vehicles if necessary, while Thompson positioned his machine gun to cover the most likely avenues of approach. Williams maintained communication with their base, requesting immediate air support and providing updates on the developing situation. However, the nearest attack helicopters were over an hour away, meaning the SEAL team would have to handle this fight independently. The first vehicle, a battered pickup truck with a heavy machine gun mounted in the bed, rounded the final bend and approached the compound entrance. Through his scope, Rodriguez could see at least 4 armed men in the truck bed, with 2 more in the cab. Lead vehicle has 6 personnel, heavy machine gun mounted, Rodriguez reported.
Second vehicle is a larger truck, estimate 8 to 10 personnel.
Third vehicle is hanging back, maybe 400 meters. Omar's voice suddenly crackled through their radio frequency. The third vehicle carries their leader, a man called Ibrahim the Scorpion.
He is one of my 8.
Morrison realized that Omar had somehow accessed their communication channel, demonstrating technical skills that suggested military or intelligence training in his background. The lead vehicle stopped approximately 100 meters from the compound entrance, and armed men began dismounting while maintaining tactical spacing. These weren't amateur fighters, they moved with discipline and apparent training.
Professional soldiers, Morrison observed. Former Iraqi army, probably. Omar's response sent chills down Morrison's spine.
Yes. They served under my unit before the war. They know me, and they know I hunt them. The implications hit Morrison like a physical blow. Omar wasn't just a grieving civilian seeking revenge, he was a former military officer hunting his own former subordinates who had turned to insurgency. This added layers of complexity to an already dangerous situation.
Rodriguez, do you have a shot on their heavy weapon? Morrison asked.
Affirmative. Clean shot, approximately 180 meters.
Wait for my command.
Let them get closer to the compound. The insurgents began advancing in fire teams, using proper military tactics to approach the compound. Their leader, presumably Ibrahim, remained with the third vehicle while directing his men's movements through hand signals. Morrison was about to give Rodriguez the command to engage when Omar's rifle spoke first, its sound echoing across the irrigation ditches. Through his scope, Rodriguez watched the insurgent machine gunner collapse across his weapon, eliminating their primary threat with a single precise shot. The fight for the compound had begun, and Morrison realized his team was now part of Omar's personal war for justice. The firefight erupted with devastating intensity as Omar's opening shot triggered chaos among the insurgent forces. The remaining 14 fighters immediately took cover behind their vehicles and began returning fire toward the compound, their muzzle flashes lighting up the pre-dawn darkness like deadly fireworks. Morrison's SEAL team responded with the precision that had made them legends among special operations forces. Rodriguez engaged targets at range while Thompson's machine gun swept the approach routes, forcing the insurgents to remain pinned behind inadequate cover. Omar had vanished into the irrigation ditches surrounding the compound, becoming a ghost who struck without warning. His shots came from different positions, creating the illusion of multiple snipers operating around the battlefield. Each shot found its mark, eliminating insurgents with surgical precision while never revealing his actual location. "He's incredible," Rodriguez muttered into his radio after watching Omar eliminate 2 more targets from what appeared to be impossible angles. "I've never seen fieldcraft like this." The insurgents were clearly confused and demoralized by the invisible sniper who seemed to be everywhere at once. Their return fire became increasingly wild and undisciplined as fear overcame their military training. Ibrahim, the leader Omar had identified as the Scorpion, finally lost patience with his men's inability to locate their tormentors. He grabbed a radio and began shouting orders in rapid Arabic, directing his fighters to assault the compound directly rather than continue the long-range engagement.
Williams, monitoring their communications, translated for Morrison.
"He's ordering a direct assault. Says they're being hunted by a demon and need to finish this quickly." "A demon," Morrison repeated grimly.
"Omar's psychological warfare is working."
The insurgents began their assault in 2 groups, attempting to flank the compound from north and south while laying down suppressing fire. It was a tactically sound plan that might have worked against ordinary defenders, but they were facing Navy SEALs supported by perhaps the most skilled sniper any of them had ever encountered. Chen's demolition charges detonated as the first assault group reached the compound's outer wall, showering the attackers with concrete fragments and temporarily stunning them. Thompson immediately shifted his machine gun fire to catch them in the open, while Rodriguez provided precise shots to eliminate specific threats.
Omar's contribution to the defense was almost supernatural.
He appeared briefly at the compound's eastern wall, eliminated 3 insurgents with rapid precision shots, then disappeared before their companions could return fire. 30 seconds later, he struck from the western approach, taking down 2 more fighters before melting back into the shadows. "Sir, the 3rd vehicle is moving," Rodriguez reported.
"Ibrahim is trying to escape." Morrison made a split-second decision. "Rodriguez, Chan, maintain the defense here. Williams, Thompson, with me. We're going after Ibrahim."
The 3 SEALs sprinted from the compound as Omar's voice crackled over their radio.
"Ibrahim is mine.
I have waited 2 years for this moment." "Omar, wait for support," Morrison called back, but received no response. They found Omar's position near the access road, where he had established a perfect ambush point as Ibrahim's vehicle attempted to flee. The truck was stopped in the middle of the road, its engine smoking from a precision shot that had disabled the radiator. Ibrahim had taken cover behind the vehicle with his 2 remaining bodyguards, trading shots with Omar, who was concealed among a cluster of date palms approximately 200 meters away. The insurgent leader was clearly desperate, firing bursts from his AK-47 in Omar's general direction while screaming curses in Arabic. Morrison and his men approached from behind, trapping Ibrahim between 2 forces. The insurgent leader suddenly realized his predicament and attempted to surrender, throwing down his weapon and raising his hands above his head. "No surrender," Omar's voice carried clearly across the distance. "You showed no mercy to children sleeping in their beds." Morrison understood that Omar had moved beyond military objectives into pure vengeance. Ibrahim had participated in the bombing that killed Omar's family, and no amount of tactical advantage would save the insurgent leader now. "Omar, he's disarmed," Morrison called out. "We can take him prisoner for interrogation."
"What information could he give you that would bring back innocent lives?" Omar replied.
"Some debts can only be paid with blood."
Ibrahim apparently understood enough English to comprehend his fate. He began pleading in Arabic, perhaps trying to negotiate or offering information in exchange for his life. His bodyguards had already fled into the surrounding countryside, abandoning their leader to face Omar's justice alone.
Omar emerged from the palm grove, his rifle held at ready position as he approached Ibrahim with deliberate steps. Morrison could see the profound pain and determination in Omar's eyes, the look of a man who had already sacrificed everything for this moment. "Ibrahim," Omar said in Arabic, then switched to English for Morrison's benefit.
"Do you remember the school bus? Do you remember the children's faces when your bomb exploded?"
Ibrahim's response was lost in sobbing pleas for mercy that would never come.
Omar's final shot was clean and quick, a professional execution that ended Ibrahim's life instantly.
The phantom sniper stood over his enemy's body for several long moments, as if confirming that this chapter of his quest was truly finished. Morrison approached slowly, unsure of what to say to someone who had just completed such a personal mission for justice. Omar turned to face him, and Morrison was surprised to see tears streaming down the sniper's face. 7 remain, Omar said quietly.
7 more, and then, perhaps I can find peace. Omar, what will you do after the 7?
Omar shouldered his rifle and began walking toward the river, his silhouette already beginning to fade into the pre-dawn darkness. His final words carried back to Morrison on the desert wind. "After the 7, I will decide whether Omar al-Rashid deserves to live again, or whether the Phantom should join his family in whatever comes next." Morrison watched until Omar disappeared completely, understanding that he had witnessed something extraordinary. A man had died in that bombing 2 years ago, replaced by something driven purely by the need for justice. Whether Omar would find redemption or destruction at the end of his quest remained unknown. The SEAL team never encountered their Phantom ally again, though reports continued to filter through intelligence channels about mysterious eliminations of insurgent leaders throughout the region. Morrison often wondered whether Omar ever found the peace he sought, or whether some ghosts are destined to walk the earth forever, hunting those who create more ghosts in their wake. Years later, when Morrison retired from the Navy and wrote his memoirs, he dedicated a chapter to the Phantom sniper who emerged from the river that morning, understanding that some stories of war transcend simple tales of victory and defeat to become something approaching legend.